Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says a Russian missile attack on Ukraine's capital during a visit by the UN Secretary-General illustrates Russia's contempt for global institutions. Mr. Zelensky said the strikes on Kyiv showed that civilians in Ukrainian cities could not relax. Gareth Barlow reports.
Missile strikes in the centre of Kyiv, the first for 2 weeks. 2 Russian rockets struck a 25-storey building, close to where the head of the UN was staying during a visit to the country. Several people were left injured by the attack.
I was shocked to be informed that 2 rockets had exploded in the city where I am. So this is a dramatic war, and we absolutely need to end this war, and we absolutely need to have a solution for this war.
The missile struck just hours after the UN Secretary-General criticised the organisation's Security Council for failing to prevent or end the war, saying the situation was a source of anger, frustration and disappointment. It's scenes like these that the US President Joe Biden says he's trying to prevent, with a proposed new aid package worth $33 billion, the majority of which to help increase Ukraine's air defence and artillery capacity, as well as offering further economic and humanitarian support.
This is a very important step by the United States, and I am grateful to the American people and personally to President Biden. I hope that the Congress will quickly support this request for help for our state.
NATO says it's ready to support Ukraine for years to come, as it warns the war could drag on. And as Russia shows it's fully prepared to strike at the heart of the country during an official visit by the UN, and as President Putin increasingly warns the West to back off, it seems NATO's warning could easily prove to be true. Gareth Barlow, BBC News.
Let's talk to our correspondent Joe Inwood in Kyiv. And hello to you, Joe. A real shock, first of all, from the UN Secretary-General that Kyiv was attacked while he was visiting. What do we know about that?
Yeah, so it was a number of missiles, 2 of them struck, we believe, a building that's about 2 miles from where I'm standing now in a residential district, and so just 2 miles from where the United Nations Secretary-General was as well. As you say, shocking. I think it's really worth bearing in mind. It's a surprising event, it's an extraordinary event for him to be in a city when a missile attack happens, but the idea that this was a missile attack launched by a permanent member of the Security Council is really extraordinary. It followed his criticisms of that body. It was a difficult and I'd say probably quite emotional day for the Secretary-General. He'd previously visited a number of areas where there had been alleged Russian atrocities, alleged war crimes, Irpin, Bucha, places your viewers will have heard of, and he then was having this joint press conference with President Zelensky when the missiles struck. Of course, he was not hurt in the attack, but he was visibly shaken.
Now, as you mentioned, Joe, he was in those areas where intense fighting has taken place. What is going on right now? What are the latest developments in the fighting around Ukraine?
Well, it's very much concentrated in the east of the country, in the area called the Donbass, which we've talked about so much now. It's there, we're into this sort of second stage of the war, a more attritional, trench-based, very much artillery-based stage of the fighting. The Russians have been carrying out heavy bombardments overnight, we understand focused on areas like Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. They're basically trying to batter the Ukrainian positions into submission, into retreat. The Ukrainians are very well dug in though, and British military intelligence overnight has said there hasn't been much movement in either direction on the front lines.
Joe, just in the last few minutes, there has been a line from the Ukrainian president's office that there is going to be an attempt to mount an operation to get civilians out of the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. Is there any word on that?
No, that is news to me, but it is something which we know they've been focused on. It was something that the Secretary-General had said in advance he wanted to try and achieve. We're talking here about a humanitarian corridor. Now, there have been many discussions around the form that would take, who would be eligible for it. So would it include, for example, injured fighters who are holed up in the Azovstal steel plant? This is the last holdout of Ukrainian resistance. Would it just be civilians? And where would they go? The idea that there is going to be some attempt at it tells you there may have been a diplomatic breakthrough, but to actually achieve it, well, I think that's something people will believe when they see it in action.
OK, Joe, thank you very much. Joe Inwood there in Kyiv. Just a look at the pictures that are coming in from Kyiv. We believe that is one of the locations of those strikes that we've been talking about in Kyiv itself. And that is obviously what we've been discussing. Mr. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, so very shocked that Kyiv should be attacked during his visit to Ukraine.